If there is a new assignment on the bulletin board, you can investigate that story. If there is no new assignment, finish working on your current story. You can also select a finished front page to see it or print it out. I'm hearing reports of a clash between colonial militia and British redcoats at the towns of Lexington and Concord near Boston. If it's true, this could mean war. I need you to get the facts.
I was praying it wouldn't come to this. Surely these differences are not worth bloodshed.
I bet it was the redcoats who started it.
And I'm just as sure you're wrong. The people of Massachusetts are bent on governing themselves, no matter what the cost.
Well, James and Sarah, your job as apprentice reporters is to set aside your differences and find out what truly happened. We need all the details. You need to determine the who, what, when, and where behind these battles. And don't forget what Ben taught us. I want thorough reporting here. Be sure to get at least 2 quotes about why people think it happened. And if at all possible, try to make one of them Paul Revere. I've heard that he was instrumental in alerting the colonists.
We will do our very best, Moses. Won't we, James?
Don't worry about me.
The questions you need to ask are in your notebook. Remember, we need a complete and accurate account of the battles. Oh, and at least try to get along. Good luck, and Godspeed.
The Buckman Tavern. This 65-year-old hostelry is a popular stopover for folks journeying from Boston.
I'm ready to rest myself. It's about 12 miles out to here from the city.
This tavern can be a busy place, but it's pretty quiet right now. Drying beef is one way of keeping it from going bad.
It may not always be very palatable, though.
A sword. Usually, only officers carry swords. Be careful, that thing's sharp.
Excuse me, ma'am. We're reporters from the Pennsylvania Gazette. Would you mind answering a few questions?
About the fighting here in Lexington, I suppose. I can give you a few minutes. My youngest is taking a nap, and the other children are clearing away breakfast.
Do you have a husband involved in the fighting?
Yes. My Robert has been listening to those Sons of Liberty. My father's very angry with him. He doesn't see the need for violence, even if some disagree with the way the king has been handling these troubles. I pray that my husband will make wise decisions. But there now, I'm going on and on. What did you want to ask me?
Who was involved in the battles at Lexington and Concord?
My husband and the rest of the Lexington Company were involved in the first fight with the British on Lexington Green. I'm not sure about the rest of the conflict.
What actually happened at Lexington and Concord?
There were clouds of smoke from the muskets and all kinds of shouting and fighting. My children were so scared. Many men were killed on both sides.
When did the battles take place?
Oh, yes. I had just finished cleaning up breakfast when the church bell tolled the alarm. It was sometime early on April 19th. My husband left when he heard the company's drummer sounding the call to arms.
Where exactly did the fighting take place?
It started here in Lexington, Massachusetts, right out on the green. The British troops marched on to the town of Concord, where the main fighting started. After clashes in both Lexington and Concord, the Minutemen shot at the British from behind walls and trees, all the way back along the roads to Boston.
Why do you think the fighting took place?
My husband says that we need to stand with the people of Boston.
The road to Concord. It's about 6 miles from Lexington to Concord. A bedroll. A rolled-up blanket or two for travelers or soldiers to keep warm at night. Concord Green. So peaceful now, it's hard to imagine it filled with soldiers. We need to hurry so we can get back in time to meet Moses' deadline for the newspaper.
That's a letter, and secured with a red wax seal.
I heard that there was quite a fight at the North Bridge. 400 militia advanced against 120 redcoats.
The colonists seem to have already made up their minds that they will not be reconciled with Britain. I somehow feel that many more people will die before this conflict is ended.
Let's hope a resolution can be found quickly.
Good morning there. My name's Sexton Newman from North Church, Boston. How may I be of service to you?
Good morning, sir. We're reporters from the Pennsylvania Gazette. My name's Sarah Phillips, and this is James Hiller. Are you the Sexton Newman who lit the lanterns in the church tower to show which way the British soldiers were traveling?
That was me. One if by land, two if by sea. And it was 2 lanterns I hung, of course.
This cemetery seems a lonely place to be on a spring morning, Mr. Newman.
I was praying for the families of those who died in the recent fighting. In fact, I would love to have my Bible here with me. I left it in the Clark House in Lexington.
We can get it for you. But would you then mind answering a few questions?
Not at all. And thank you so much.
I think most of the people in the colonies are up in arms about Parliament's oppression.
You can't be sure. The country is still divided between Loyalists, Patriots, and those who are undecided.
We can only carry 4 items at a time. If we want to keep this, we'll have to replace something we already have. This is the road to Lexington.
The town looks fairly small.
About 750 people. Small indeed, compared to Boston.
This must be Lexington Green.
I wonder if any fighting took place here. We need to do some interviews. Reverend Clark's house.
I've heard he sometimes entertains some important visitors. This lovely room reminds me of my home in England. Don't forget, we need to get the opinions of everyone involved. There are many different perspectives on this conflict.
Yes, including yours and mine. Let's not forget that we should make a sketch of any interesting places or
If we need some help, we can always call on Ben's expertise. So, Henri, it looks like we will find you wherever there's a chance for some food.
What's wrong with that?
Can you forget about your stomach long enough to help us out with some questions?
I cannot think right now. I am still hungry. A little dried beef would be magnifique with this bread. My stomach thanks you. What questions do you want to ask me?
Who was involved in the battles at Lexington and Concord?
It was the Patriots and the lobsterbacks.
What actually happened at Lexington and Concord?
I heard that the redcoats just attacked innocent people.
When did the battles take place?
It happened a few weeks ago, I think.
Where exactly did the fighting take place?
In Lexington and Concord. I think that may be 2 different towns.
Why do you think the fighting took place?
The British are trying to take away the rights of the colonists. The colonists want to stand up for their freedom.
A Bible. Many groups have been inspired by the words in its pages.
This looks like the road out to the Adams farm. Okay.
I was praying for the families of those. Thank you so much. Now, if you happen to see Mr. Paul Revere on your travels, could you please give him the message I set over by the headstone?
Who was involved in the battles at Lexington and Concord?
I'm not sure I know exactly who was involved in the fighting.
What actually happened at Lexington and Concord?
Patriot spies discovered that the British wanted to seize Samuel Adams and John Hancock, as well as munitions. Colonial militia confronted the British soldiers, and someone opened fire. It soon became a significant battle.
When did the battles take place?
The fighting broke out on a morning in mid-April and lasted all day.
Where exactly did the fighting take place?
It may not be exactly where you think. There was some fighting in Lexington and more at Concord, but much took place in the fields and other towns on the way back to Boston.
Why do you think the fighting took place?
Many church leaders have argued that men have a God-given right to freedom. The rebel militia put their lives on the line to protect what they believe is right.
A message on a scroll. Someone may be needing this. General Thomas Gage, the British governor of Massachusetts, has been sending out his soldiers to stir up trouble.
I think you better check your facts, James. Gage may be the commander of all British forces in America, but he's a wonderful leader and wants to avoid bloodshed at all costs.
Let's not forget that we... Sir, you look like a member of the local militia. Were you involved in the recent fighting?
I sure was, young man. I'm one of the fortunate few who have a uniform. Most of the company just wear normal workday clothes.
Are you one of the so-called Minutemen?
That's right. Ready to leave home at a minute's notice. We've been training together for about 6 months now. I think we're more than a match for the British.
I'm proud of you men. It must have been quite a fight. We're reporters from the Pennsylvania Gazette. Can we ask you a few questions?
You know, I'd love to help. But Captain Parker told us that we all need to parade this afternoon in full kit. We're all supposed to have a musket, canteen, and jackknife. I have to stay here and guard the green, but I'm missing a knife and I don't have time to look for one. I think I lost mine in a field during the battle.
If we can find you one, will you help us out?
It's a deal. When you get back, I'll let you go over the green to the buildings beyond. There may be someone else there you can interview.
The Adams Farm. John Adams is a successful lawyer and also one of the men involved in the Continental Congress.
That's right. Each colony has sent representatives to the meetings in Philadelphia. John Adams is one of the delegates from the colony of Massachusetts.
This parlor is where the Adams family entertains guests, though I've heard that John Adams is often away on business.
A jackknife. Useful for all sorts of things. In fact, some regiments require that their soldiers carry them.
You know, I'd love to help.
We found a jackknife.
Thank you. I appreciate your help. You're free to go across the green if you'd like. Now, how can I help you with your story?
Who was involved in the battles at Lexington and Concord?
There were lots of men involved in the fighting. Captain Parker led our company here in Lexington. There were many other militia and almost 2,000 British troops involved by the end of the day.
What actually happened at Lexington and Concord?
The British marched on Concord. They split up to seize the hidden stores of ammunition. As our militia advanced to stop them, the British opened fire. It soon became a full-fledged battle. After early morning fighting in Lexington and Concord, the British marched back to Boston. We shot at them from behind walls and trees along the way. If more British soldiers hadn't come to help them, we might have killed them all.
When did the battles take place?
It was early morning, April 19th, when the fighting broke out. It continued all day.
Where exactly did the fighting take place?
In the Massachusetts towns of Lexington, Concord, Menotomy, and the roads in between.
Why do you think the fighting took place?
The British Parliament has been taking away our liberties one by one. They were taking us lightly, and they underestimated our ability to defend ourselves when they sent their troops after our patriot leaders. We are ready and willing to fight for our freedom.
This old barn looks like a good place to find something interesting.
If you find rats and fleas interesting.
Finally! You're Paul Revere, aren't you? One of the famous Sons of Liberty!
I don't deny it, young man.
Aren't you one of the gentlemen who rode through the night to warn the colonists that the British regulars were coming to capture the stores of ammunition?
That's correct. I also rode to warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock that they were in danger of being arrested.
Would you mind answering some questions about the clash between the Americans and the British?
I'd be happy to, once I take care of a piece of business. Sexton Robert Newman has an important message for me from John Hancock that I'm supposed to carry back to Boston. I need to give it to the other Sons of Liberty working there. Newman seems to have been delayed. Can you find him and bring the message to me? I need you to bring me a message from Sexton Newman. I'm very grateful. I have a little time to talk before I have to leave. What questions did you have?
Who was involved in the battles at Lexington and Concord?
From what I hear, a lot of people were involved. Some British regulars marched out of Boston. These soldiers clashed with armed colonists from the local villages and farms.
What actually happened at Lexington and Concord?
The British had been ordered to seize the colonists' stashes of weapons and gunpowder. The colonists tried to stop them and fighting broke out. Over 100 people were killed.
When did the battles take place?
It was an April morning, just this year. It started the morning of April 19th, right after my midnight ride through the countryside, warning the towns that the regulars were coming.
Where exactly did the fighting take place?
It wasn't that far from the city of Boston. The first clash was on Lexington Green, just outside of the town. The next battle took place in the town of Concord, and then fighting continued all day back to the outskirts of the city.
Why do you think the fighting took place?
It was bound to happen eventually. The British government's policies toward America have become increasingly firm. They see us as rebellious children who need disciplining. Parliament and King George want to force us into submission. Their decision to send more British troops to Boston was very foolish.
A coil of rope.
A set of keys. I wonder what they open. What a beautiful room! Excuse me, ma'am. We're sorry to disturb you, but...
Are you Mrs. Adams? John Adams' wife?
That is correct, but you can call me Abigail. And who might you two eager youngsters be?
My name's Sarah Phillips, ma'am. I've recently come from England to stay in Philadelphia while awaiting word from my father. He's out on the Ohio frontier.
And I'm James Hiller, famous reporter for the Pennsylvania Gazette.
Famous reporter?
Soon to be famous anyway, once I get this story written.
Once we get this story written.
Well, I suppose you have some questions to ask me then. But first I have a favor to ask of you. You don't happen to have a book of Phyllis Wheatley's poems, do you? I'm eager to find a copy. I fell in love with books even before I fell in love with John, and I've heard that Miss Wheatley's writings are beautiful and inspirational.
We don't have a copy, but we'll find one and bring it to you. A book of Phyllis Wheatley's poems, the first book of poetry ever published by a slave in America.
In 1773, if I'm not mistaken, and to great acclaim in both America and England.
Well, I suppose you have some questions.
We managed to find a copy of the book.
Oh, wonderful. I cannot wait to read this. But first, I promised you I would answer some questions. How can I help you?
Who was involved in the battles at Lexington and Concord?
It was ordinary farmers and townsfolk fighting for their freedom against the best of the British Army. It was the Minutemen from Lexington, Concord, and the surrounding towns fighting against British soldiers sent from Boston by Governor Thomas Gage.
What actually happened at Lexington and Concord?
I didn't actually hear all the details. I would not want to mislead you in any way.
When did the battles take place?
Let's see now. I'll try to remember. It was mid-April, I believe, but I'm not sure of the exact date. It did begin quite early in the morning.
Where exactly did the fighting take place?
Around the towns and countryside on the west side of Boston.
Why do you think the fighting took place?
Governor Gage had been ordered to seize the stores of ammunition that the Patriots had gathered. Parliament doesn't understand that America is a very different place than Britain. We have a sense of freedom here that we are not willing to give up. Some are even willing to die for it.
A journal. Many people keep journals of important events or experiences in their lives.
Welcome back. I'm anxious to hear the news from Lexington and Concord.
You should have seen it. Those British didn't know what hit them.
Can't liberty come without bloodshed? This struggle is no longer simply a contest of ideas. It promises to be a contest of arms. It promises to be everything I had prayed we would avoid.
I fear you are correct, Sarah. We need to inform the colonies about the battles of Lexington and Concord. You need to decide which quotes you want to put in your story. Head over to the editing desk on the back wall. It's vital that our readers understand the significance of this event. Try to pick the best quotes from your notebook pages. Select a part of your story and then choose a quote to go there. Remember, you can get feedback about the quotes you choose before you print your article. Don't forget Feedback appears below each of your quotes. Good work! If you think you have finished editing your story, go to the layout area in front of the printing press to design the front page of your newspaper. This is the layout area, where you can make your newspaper front page look just the way you want before you print it out. Choose a sketch for your front page and type in a headline. Publish the paper once you are finished. The battles at Lexington and Concord mark the beginning of the Revolutionary War. We want our readers to get all the details. We need to get it published. You can look at the chalkboard to see how many newspapers your story has sold. You can also take a copy to Ben, now that he's arrived in Philadelphia. He loves to keep up on the news.
So, shots have been fired. 'Tis not good news, though well reported by young James and Sarah. I had hoped to avoid a war at all costs. But now that we have one, the colonies must stand united. And other recent news has emphasized that fact. First, the Battle of Bunker Hill showed the British that the Americans are determined to fight. But the discouraging failures in Canada and now on Long Island, New York, show that we need Congress to support a strong Continental Army. Yet I fear that even with George Washington at its head, we will need help from elsewhere before this conflict is over. I could do no more good in Britain for the time being, but perhaps I can be of some help here in America in setting the direction of our future as a united people.
James, Sarah, I feel that something big is going to happen, with Ben Franklin, John Adams, and the other colonial statesmen meeting together here in Philadelphia. Be ready to go out on assignment. I'll let you know where to go next.
We'll be ready.
As reporters, you'll have to ask the right questions and get the facts and opinions that make the most accurate and interesting story. As a matter of fact, an exciting assignment has just come in. You'll find it over on the bulletin board.